And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. This is our 55th edition of Assembly Call Radio and our 359th episode of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, December 7th, 2017. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, sitting in for Jared Morris tonight. And let's begin this week how we begin every episode of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. When you look at the weekend totality, for me, the banner moment has to be the play of Juwan Morgan. He posted 24 points and 8 rebounds while doing his best to single-handedly keep IU in the game at Michigan. And then he followed that up with 15 points and 10 rebounds against Iowa in a Big Ten win on Monday. So those raw numbers themselves are obviously impressive, and we'll touch on that more during the show. But the reality is there almost certainly won't be any banners to hang at the end of this year. While we certainly would like that to be the case, that seems to be the way this season is going. And so, I thought Galen Clavio of Crimson Cast and also of pinch hitting host for the Assembly Call fame, I think he said it well on their podcast today. And what he said was essentially that part of the excitement for this season is that it feels like you're part of the start of something. And that to me is why Juwan's play is worthy of the banner moment. Not because it will lead to a banner this year, but because he's helping to establish the standard for what an Archie Miller team is going to look like, how hard they're going to play, what kind of teammates they intend to be, and how much they want to win. And so before the season, when Archie tossed out this notion of responsibility for production with Juwan, I don't know that we all knew what that really meant. But in recent games, Juwan has assumed that responsibility, and in doing so has established himself as arguably the team's best player. And while he isn't a flashy guy, he's one that can impact the game in a variety of ways. But after seeing him show flashes only to be slowed by injury earlier in his career, Juwan's an easy guy to root for, and I'm hopeful that once another banner is hung, we can look back at how things started under Archie Miller and what a crucial role Juwan Morgan played in leading by example, building the culture, and laying the foundation for a new era of IU basketball. And with that, let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, back by popular demand, we have the official coach of the Assembly Call. Maybe if the Delphi bracketology performance continues the way it has been, or maybe how it already has been, he may soon be the official bracketologist of the Assembly Call. He is the host of Sports Talk with Tonsoni, a longtime high school basketball coach and the faculty advisor of the world-renowned Delphi Bracketology Club. He is Brian Tonsoni, which means it's now Tonsoni time, as Jared dubbed it in his notes to me. So, Brian, what's at the top of your mind for this week in IU basketball?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to talk IU basketball. For me, I'll follow up on your comment and Galen's comment about a start of something new. I think we're starting to see signs of an Archie Miller type program. And for most of us, the reality is it has to take some time. And you've come out now and said that there might not be any banners hanging at the end of this year. That's might be a sad truth, but you're starting to see some growth. And the thing that hit me after the Michigan game and the Iowa game is everything is a first when a coach takes over a program. And even though players have experience and have played before and some kids are new to the program, everything's a first. The first really solid performance ended in a loss to Duke. Obviously, they believed the accolades and came out flat. And Ryan always says the Saturday morning or afternoon games are hard to get up for. It's going to happen with an Archie Miller team as well as other coaches. But Archie will put his spin on it. And I thought they responded rather well coming back to Iowa. I will be excited to see what happens in the next 2 games. But you're starting to see improvement in areas that we've longed for. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Some things offensively that most of us have wanted to see. And there is a start to a defense. It's still giving up too many points and too many open threes and so forth. But you're starting to see it become what it can be. And once we get some dudes in here, or some Archie Miller dudes, as we say, then I think you're really going to see this program. So it's tough at times to watch because we want to win. But I do think there's a lot of positives.
Yep, I totally agree. And to my right, we have someone who is already choreographing his I Told You So dance for when Juwan Morgan is a lottery pick after he wins Big Ten Player of the Year this year, a columnist for The Big Lead, and a man who recently claimed he could fix Robert Johnson's ailing outside shot with just one 30-minute shooting session if IU could only afford him. He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant from the past week in Indiana basketball?
I am way out of their price range. Let's face it, right now. No, I think that the big story of the week is not necessarily the trends or anything, but it was that 18-0 run against Iowa. I thought that was, they had a big run in the first half to take a 15-point lead, came out in the second half and just got punched in the mouth by Iowa. Iowa was just running all over them. Gets it back down to 1 point within a few minutes. And then to see Indiana just sort of methodically strangle that game and just methodically, beat the game out of Iowa. Because it wasn't a flashy run like they did at Michigan a few years ago where they were just hitting threes like crazy and running the floor and dunking. I mean, they were outplaying them on offense and they were outplaying them on defense. So, that was encouraging to see that to watch a team with a new coach methodically just beat the will out of somebody and raise that to I think it was about a 22-point game when they started to pull the starters, and it wound up being 13 or so because of late garbage time scores. But I was very encouraged by that. I thought that it was a balanced attack. I thought a lot of guys got involved. You saw Hartman, Davis, Morgan in the front court. I guess you could call Hartman in the front court. He's kind of a wing. He's a wing, but he can play at the rim. And then you saw Devontae Green also get a dozen, and then Johnson, Newkirk 9, 6, and then Al Durham had 7. So you had a real balanced effort, and I think that I think that was just an encouraging sign that you could just see an Archie Miller coach team methodically take apart an inferior opponent. To be honest, I don't think Iowa was very good. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this weekend against Louisville, against clearly a team that's far superior to Iowa. Well, can they bring that same approach with, a week to prepare essentially against a team that's clearly going to pressure them and press them in different ways than Iowa did and even than Michigan did. So I loved that run. I thought it showed a lot about the team, and it was nice to bounce back after that disappointing loss against Michigan.
All right, so here's what's on tap for our discussion this week. We're going to take a look back at those first 3 games of this key 5-game stretch that we all earmarked at the beginning of the season, and talk through some lingering questions that we've either, gotten sent to us or thrown out in our post-game emails and things like that. Just wanted to get Ryan and Brian's opinions on what those look like. We'll get our resident coach here, his opinion on a couple key aspects of IU's offense and defense so far. We'll touch on the Curtis Jones transfer, and then we'll answer some of your questions from Twitter to wrap things up. All that coming up here on Assembly Call Radio. Now, this quick reminder. The next time you're looking for tickets to a sporting event or concert, remember our friends at SeatGeek. You can download their app, which is incredibly convenient and easy to use. Or if you just want an easy-to-remember URL that will take you directly to the IU basketball ticket listings on SeatGeek's website, it's here at iutickets.shop. So, for example, do you want tickets to one of Indiana's 3 games over holiday break, currently as low as $7? Or if you want to plan ahead and get tickets for an upcoming Big Ten game for later in the season, IU basketball tickets make great stocking stuffers. So check out the latest ticket deals on SeatGeek on the SeatGeek app or at iutickets.shop. And if it's your first time using SeatGeek, don't forget the promo code ASSEMBLY. Use it when you make your first purchase, and you'll get $20 back after that purchase. Again, the promo code is ASSEMBLY. All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni. And IU is now 3 games into the 5-game gauntlet that everyone identified as such a key stretch to start the season. And while they're 1-2 in those games, I think, as Brian mentioned, we've seen flashes of improvement, and we've also seen periods of falling back into old habits. So a little bit of a mixed bag through those first 3 games. And before we hit those lingering questions I talked about, just wanted to give each of you a chance to give me your biggest takeaway from the trio of games against Duke, Michigan, and Iowa. Brian, I'll go to you first on this one. What's kind of the biggest thing that sticks out to you after those 3 games?
Well, from a coaching standpoint, you sink to the level of your training. And when pressure comes, whether it's at home against the number 1 team or it's a road trip, first Big Ten road trip, you sink at pressure moments, you sink to the level of your training. And that's what's showing up to me in these 3 games, that Archie did a nice job getting the team prepared for Duke. The fans really help. That energy makes it a lot better to focus and concentrate on the game plan and executing the things that needed to be done. And then you go on the road and it's a little different. And then when you give up a run to Michigan, again, you sink back to that level. So I think that's what I get from that. And the nice thing, and I'll second what Ryan said, is they handled that adversity at home against Iowa. And the big test will be, can they handle that adversity the next time they're on the road? You have a Louisville game coming up. They're going to need that. So those are the takeaways. The other thing is I think they can play with people on their schedule. They're going to have their margin for error is smaller than other programs, but I think on a given night they can play with the people that are left on the schedule.
Yep, I think that's definitely fair. And the Big Ten has shown it should be wide open. And I agree with your assessment of really being able to play with anybody, particularly in Assembly Hall. Ryan, what about you? What was the biggest thing that stood out to you from these 3 games?
Well, I thought, against Duke, they faced some adversity. I mean, Greg Doyle wrote a column, about how once Coach K started coaching the refs, the game really turned. I think really the game turned on Juwan Morgan's 4th foul, but Greg thought it turned a little earlier because when they called 8 straight fouls against Indiana, and they didn't deal with that adversity well. They really didn't, and it's fair to say that they were playing great in that game and hanging with Duke. And then when that adversity started building up, they allowed themselves to get a little frustrated, maybe started forcing things to sort of get back into the game, and it didn't really work, and that led to Duke, getting more of a run out. And then they didn't handle adversity well against Michigan. But what I liked was, as Brian said, they handled, and I touched on it my first thing, was they handled adversity against Iowa. That to me is a team growing. And what I've seen in these first 3 games of this stretch is if you take these 3 games as a whole, take the second half of Michigan. The first half of Michigan was a bust. Let's face it, it was done. But you take the second half of Michigan and you take the Duke and Iowa games and you look at them and you compare them to the first 3 games of the season, the improvement is exponential. And they are such a better team now. And it not only a better team, but they're in a better position, you can tell mentally, than they were early on. And as we talked about before the season, that's kind of a hallmark of Archie Miller teams. They get better as the year progresses. And that's always sort of been his MO, and it was at Dayton. So it's not a surprise to see that. I'm just kind of surprised at how quickly it's happened, and you've seen these guys kind of fall into roles and sort of become comfortable in the systems on both ends of the floor. So that's my takeaway, is how much better this team is than it was at the beginning of the year, and that's shown even with 2 losses in 3 games. I mean, this 5-game stretch, I think we all kind of would have loved to get 3 wins out of this, but I think that if you get 2, you're happy. Just because of where the team is in its schedule and how, soon it gets hit with these games from really forming. So, if you can come away with 3 wins, great. That's amazing. If you can come away with 2, hey, that's something you can build off of. So we'll see how they do this weekend. And then, of course, moving on to Notre Dame.
So the first one of those lingering questions that I talked about was about Juwan Morgan, who, I touched on and you guys have alluded to as well. So from a statistical standpoint, if you look at his last 6 games, 17.2 points, 7.7 rebounds, 2 blocks, 5 total turnovers in those 6 games, and 39 free throw attempts. And even if you spin that forward just to his last 3 games, 17.7 points, 8 rebounds in the last 3. So this was a question that Jared had kind of sent through an email as we were preparing for the show. And his question was essentially whether this is Juwan Morgan's team now. Ryan, how would you answer that?
I honestly think that's hard to qualify right now. I know Jared loves to get declarative with his statements, but I think that's hard to quantify right now and hard to qualify it as his team. Juwan is a guy who's going to be a quiet leader. He's never going to be a yeller. He's never going to be a guy that grabs everybody and gets in their face when there's a bad play or anything like that. I tend to think this is Colin Hartman's team. But again, we haven't seen as much of Colin Hartman as we've seen of Juwan so far, so it's hard to say that. With that said, I think we'll know by January who the leader of this team is. I think on-court performance, certainly you have to go with Juwan so far. I think there's no question about that. But I think there's more to taking ownership of a team than just scoring and rebounding. It comes a lot in leading by example and leading with your words and stepping out in front. And it's funny because Juwan has that really deep booming voice where he could, in a past life, he could have been Barry White, but you don't get to hear him much. He doesn't talk much, and he's not very vocal on the floor either. And you'd like to see him kind of grow into that a little bit, especially as a junior.
All right. Well, coming up on the assembly call, we're going to hit a few more lingering questions as we look back at these last 3 games and look forward to the remainder of this tough stretch. All right. Welcome to everybody on YouTube. I'm going to make sure that this actually recorded. Certainly hope it did.
Yeah, me too.
All right, that seemed to work, so that's always a positive. We don't have to start over. So that's a win. All right. So I hope everybody's having a good evening. Kind of been weird not to have actually this much time off. I'm sure the team is excited to actually have a little bit of time off, and Archie's just glad to have a little time off to coach. I think that's one of the things that's been.
Yeah,
I think I heard Krzyzewski bring it up about Duke, but it's just the way all these games just stack on top of one another. It's been really challenging for these coaches to be able to actually do anything.
Yeah, you go from preparing for one team to preparing for the next to preparing for the next to preparing for the next instead of actually having fundamental days and stuff. That's where you work on a guy's shot, is on those fundamental days. So Roger's going to need that.
You work on your fundamentals of your overall defense too, instead of specific game planning for player A, B on this team and A, B on that team, which incorporates some of the stuff you're doing. But with a new program, you need to get back to the basics of what you're doing as much as you possibly can to reinforce the new way of playing, because scouting defense is good, but you do need those days to repeat the basic things.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. So yeah, I'm sure everybody's glad to hopefully get into a routine, although I'm sure the finals are coming up and all those kinds of things. So some other things getting people's attention. But all right, well I'll jump back in. We'll hit these last few questions. We have that's what I should probably check, is make sure how much time we have left. That feels like an important
that would help.
Feels like an important detail.
I'm a social studies teacher. I can't help you with math.
Yeah, me either. Journalism degree doesn't lend itself to good math.
Useful if I had something to write with. 15:24, and that's out of 26 minutes, which leaves us 10:36, I believe. I was a math major, and I still can't do this. We have very little math with time, though, so that's my excuse. So 10:36. Intro will take 17 seconds. So I need to start at 10:19. Should be good. We'll try to hit these relatively quick, and if we don't get to all of them, then we don't get to all of them. But that shouldn't be a huge deal. All right. We'll hop back in here and get rolling.
Let's do it.
You are listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms. And don't forget, if you ever have to miss all or part of an episode of Assembly Call Radio, there are 2 great ways to catch up. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search for Assembly Call. Or you can join our live Thursday night broadcast or watch the video replays by subscribing to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm back with Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips, and we're talking about some lingering questions that are sitting out there in my mind, at least after this, these tough last 3 games. And so, we touched on Juwan Morgan before. Deron Davis, another guy that, as we looked at the season coming in, knew what an important role he was going to play. But if you look back at the number of minutes he's played over 23 minutes just twice and only 18 minutes in the last 2. So he's had these great moments like the second half against Duke, but he played really well against Iowa. Actually didn't pick up a foul there. But Brian, I'll kind of go to you on this. What do you think the key is to getting more minutes out of Duran? And is that even possible, or is he just a guy that we're going to have to count on for about 20 minutes a game and go from there?
Well, I think there's a couple things to consider with Duran. It's always going to be his conditioning, and playing longer stretches is different. Even total minutes, but even the stretches of time that he plays, and I wonder if that's maybe some free throw issues too. That he's in there longer than he played his freshman year and banging, and the physicality, and then he steps up to the line, and he needs to shoot those free throws fatigued a lot more. As well as to shoot them, period, in practice. But I wonder if that's some of the issue. I think you've also seen Archie start to be a little bit more concerned with getting him out at times when he might be fatigued, so he doesn't pick up a foul, because obviously the foul trouble will cause him to have reduced minutes. And I think a couple of those times he's substituted in Hartman and Morgan at the post, went with that lineup, and all of a sudden we go on a run. And if you pull a starter out and you're on a run as a coach, you're not going to put that starter back in right now because you don't want to break up the run. And I think that's kind of maybe what happened a little bit with Iowa without necessarily having a time chart in front of me. But I think the conditioning and learning, not just the physical conditioning, but players have to learn how to play at an optimal pace for 6 minutes, 7 minutes, how to properly get refreshed at a timeout or at a out of bounds place. And that's a whole part of being an athlete. And he had such a big way to improve that I think that's the next step. And then maybe you'll see some more minutes. That's my take early without knowing a whole lot.
Yeah, it was interesting. That lineup, and Archie referenced this after the game. He talked about how well that group played, where they went a little bit smaller, and that was a case where I thought Duran really struggled defensively in a really tough matchup against Mo Wagner in the Michigan game, and I think that in some ways led to him not playing. I mean, I think he ended with 3 fouls, but I don't know that the reason he wasn't on the floor was foul trouble. I do think he's at a point where, while he's improved a great deal physically, there are still some matchups out there, depending on, as more teams play small, that are going to be really challenging for him to be able to be effective in. And so I think you'll see him, rotated out that way. And as you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think that lineup with Morgan and Hartman was playing together really well.
Well, yeah, you also got to look at the fact that he's more of a traditional back to the basket post guy. And then he's got to, defensively, he probably doesn't have the lateral quickness to guard out on the floor very well. Whereas a guy like Morgan can come in and give you more of a modern post look while he's not going to back guys down and stuff. Morgan can take guys off the dribble. He can step outside and hit a jumper. And we've seen him defensively. Probably Morgan in a pinch could guard 2 through 5 on the floor if he needed to. I mean, I don't think that you obviously want him guarding a center, but and it obviously wouldn't be ideal to have him on a shooting guard, but we've seen him be able to do that, whereas Davis is kind of locked into guarding an opposing center or power forward. So I think that it allows Archie to be more versatile when he's off the floor, but at the same time, it takes away that reliable offense that we've seen Davis able to provide when he's off the floor.
All right, so the next question I had was more lineup based. And so Colin Hartman, played a season high in minutes in that Iowa game, played extremely well. I think was a plus 29 in that game or something crazy like that in 20 minutes. And Devontae Green, showed some solid flashes in that game as well. So Ryan, I'll kick this one to you. Should one or both of Colin or Devontae be put into the starting lineup, or do you like what you're seeing of those guys coming off the bench?
Well, I think Colin should be probably around January, because with him, there's that extra element of, he hasn't played in 2 years, and well over, a year and a half or whatever it is. I guess it's 2 years. Yeah. But, he really needs to get to a point where he can get up and down the floor consistently for 30 minutes before you're playing him for 25. Because if you put a guy on the floor for 25 minutes, you've got to know that that's the best 25 you're going to get, as opposed to, you'll get 20 good minutes and 5, tired minutes. So he's got to get to a point where he can play more before I'm willing to insert him into the starting lineup, especially with how he rights the ship when he comes in off the bench right now. I think it's not broke right now, so I don't think you should fix it. Devontae certainly outplayed Al Durham the last couple games, I think, and I think he's itching for a spot in the starting lineup and kind of scratching there. But I kind of like having his energy off the bench. We've talked about this. I think he's kind of the straw that stirs the drink on offense for this team, and I love his defensive intensity. Right now, I do like having him come off the bench. I think we're going to talk about Al Durham in a minute here, but certainly if you're going straight by performance, you'd put Devontae in the starting lineup. But I also like the idea that these guys are pushing each other, that performance is going to determine who plays. It's not a seniority thing. It's guys outplaying each other, and that means they're going to fight and crawl and scratch in practice to outplay each other for that spot. And competition, makes guys better. Iron sharpens iron. I mean, and so hopefully we'll start to see some of that pay off. But right now, I kind of like where the lineup's at, especially after a big win against Iowa. I'd keep it where it is. Maybe target a change after this 5-game stretch, unless something comes up and you feel like you really have to start one of those guys to have a chance to win.
Yeah, Brian, what do you think about the starters?
Yeah, I don't have a problem right now with the starting lineup. I wouldn't have the problem seeing those two young men in the starting lineup. But sometimes your best 5 are not your starting 5, based on what you want to do with matchups. What the opponents can bring in. You bring in Hartman and Devontae off the bench. Devontae's like who is the Detroit Tigers? Vinny Microwave. Yeah, right. Just coming in and pumping in points. The other thing to think about too is defensive lineup too. Devontae and Newkirk kind of struggle. And if you have Davis who struggles out on the perimeter, now if you move some of those guys in. So a lot of times we as coaches look at best defensive lineup too, and what patterns and what rotations you can.
And Archie's going to think defense first too.
Yeah, so and that's why I think he likes Durham, because of his size and his length and his ability to take care of the basketball on offense, but also do some things. Although I've seen Durham make some rookie mistakes on defense, but Archie likes size and length, so that's maybe why he's starting there. I like the offense coming out. You're going to feed the post strong early, and hopefully get Robert and Juwan and Duran going, and then you bring in 2 offensive guys in Hartman who can shoot the 3 and Devontae who can create. That's a whole different style. So you get one team guarding inside. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it too. There's 2 different ways. You go small and spread a team out. They got to adjust their defense. That's an interesting way for us to look at lineups.
All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. Guys, we got time for one more of these questions with a couple minutes left here. I mean, we touched on Al Durham a little bit, so I kind of want to throw this out. I think Jared included this in the post-game email from the Iowa game. Kind of, I'll paraphrase what his question was, but it's essentially whether there are any concerns with Al. He had a really hot start over the last 3 games, averaging right about 6 points a game, which is not bad, but just 1 assist and 3 turnovers. And so, is there any reason for concern from your perspective, Ryan, based on what we've seen from him in the last few games compared to how well he played at the beginning?
It's just a freshman being a freshman. It's the game catching up to him, I think. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm sorry. I think it's exactly. He's learning a lot. It's not high school. 7:30 on a Friday night's a lot different than 7:30 on a Wednesday with ESPN playing. But I think he's been, he's been consistent, and he provides a little stability even when he's not stuffing the stat sheet. And I think that's what Archie likes as well. And so you're starting to see some of the rotations, and again with McRoberts getting some time, you're seeing some of his Coach Miller's decision making, and I think he really likes Durham, and so Durham's that guy it's too early to call him a glue guy, but he's kind of that way. Scoring and points and other things will come, but he's out there doing the right things, and I think that helps whenever he's out there.
All right. Well, we're going to come back here in a second, and we're going to talk through a couple other coaching things with our own resident coach, Brian Tonsoni. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Stick with us. All right. Get on that. All right. Good deal. Moving right along. All right. So, Brian, I'm just going to kind of kick you both those couple coaching topics you sent. I thought those are both good. Somebody actually asked a little bit about the 3-point question anyway. So it's one I think we can kind of answer via your own thoughts. And
yeah,
then,
I don't want to say you got to watch the film a little bit more, but as coaches, you really do got to watch the film. Crean got so busted for saying that, but you can be on the sidelines and you're not going to know until you watch the tape.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, it's
totally
just
different.
It's totally different. It happens with us at high school, and you know.
Well, in the heat of the game, you also remember things differently than they actually happen too.
Yeah, you see a lot more positives on tape than what you think, even in a win. When you're there coaching live, all of a sudden you go back and then you watch tape and like, okay, that kid did that right, and that kid did that right. You might not have noticed.
Yeah, easy to make everything. Well, I mean, just look at people's comments on Twitter. It feels like no matter what's happening in the game, everything is terrible. So
yeah. Well, that's IU's fan base. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. True too.
Although watching tape when you get beat by 25 like we did against Kokomo on Tuesday is not exactly fun either, you know.
All right, I will get us.
That's unfair. Those guys had a Beach Boys song about them.
That's true. They were fast.
All right, I'll get us going here. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Go to assemblycall.com/join right now to learn how to subscribe to our email newsletter. If you want to get more out of being an IU basketball fan, then you need to be on our newsletter list. You'll get weekly 6-banner Sunday news roundups, as well as our post-game analysis emails once the season begins. It's all free, and it will make you a smarter IU basketball fan. Again, the URL is assemblycall.com/join. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And Brian, we got really good feedback from the last time you were on about, kind of your coach's angle on a few topics. And so I went to you before the show and asked if there were a couple things that you thought would be good to talk through. And one of them actually corresponds to a question that we got on Twitter from Doug, kind of asking. His question was more around a pack line defense progress report, but alluded to the fact that IU's giving up a lot of 3-pointers. And so as you kind of look at what you've seen from IU so far and the understanding of the the pack line defense, what it's supposed to do, what it may allow, what's your assessment of why everybody seems like they have a career night against IU shooting 3-pointers?
Well, being a coach is a curse too, because you really can't watch a game without a coach's perspective, and it'd be nice to watch as a fan once in a while. But progress is being made. The simple thing for the pack line is it's going to give up more 3-point shots because it's guarding the lane and it's further away from the 3-point line. So naturally, you're going to give up more shots. What you want to do is have contested threes or get out with a hand up. And what's hurt IU so far is uncontested threes, and most college kids can hit at a good clip if they're uncontested. And there are 3 ways, and there's probably more, but to me there are 3 ways. One, dribble penetration, and that puts the defense in full rotation. There is transition, if you're not communicating in transition and leaving someone open, and then that creates another full rotation. And then getting screened. And if a shooter's coming off and you allow yourself to get screened, we call it melting into a screen. When your shoulder hits the screener, that's not good. So to go over those real quickly, dribble penetration's gotten better. I think the guards are starting to guard their yard. We still give it up a little bit, but you don't want to guard. And when you're in help, we called it tag position. And that is where you stunt. You take a quick step at the dribbler, hopefully stop his momentum, and then recover back quickly. We call that tags, and you're in tag position. A good tag gets the ball stopped. A bad tag lets the dribbler into the lane, and then you got to commit. And there's a difference between a help and a kind of a help and a commitment, that tag, and a full commitment where you take your whole body to stop the player and leave your man open, and then that's got to be covered. So that's one thing. The other thing is transition defense. If you don't come back and identify shooters, then that's going to put us in full rotation. And Michigan did a nice job. And Beeline does a lot of this by design because he's a really good offensive mind. And he's going to put that pack line, test that pack line. but we weren't communicating. And Archie's always harped on communicating. And so when someone's open on the wing, all of a sudden there's a hard closeout. And then on the backside, that leaves someone open. And a good offense drives closeouts. And if you don't close out short and low with your hands up, if you drive out hard, close out hard, they drive around you. Again, that's a full rotation. They find the open man 2 or 3 passes, and you have an open 3. And the third thing is screening. And good teams have their hands out and catch screens with their hands. When you catch a screen with your hand, you feel it, and then you can throw that screener through and get around. If you don't catch with your hands and catch with your shoulder, then you are caught in the screen. And in the college game, the slightest bit of opening for good shooters, if you're caught in that screen, catch, and it's going to go down. So we want to see our guys more head on a swivel. Ball screen defense happened a little bit too, and you overhelp on a ball screen defense. You got to leave someone open. Sometimes we leave the strong side open when we're supposed to leave the weak side open and rotate that way. But those things are starting to get fixed, and the more we practice and the more practice time we have, those rotations are going to be a lot better. And you're already starting to see it improve. But those are 3 areas that I think fans can watch for to see when we give up open threes, which one of those 3 or ball screen defense was the reason.
Yeah, I think that with the pack line, what people have to understand, because you kind of got to think of it, what it's trying to accomplish, a bit like a zone. It's trying to get everybody out of the middle. You don't let anybody into the paint. That is the cardinal sin in a pack line defense, is letting somebody into the paint, and everybody's supposed to help prevent that from happening. And that's pretty much what you're doing with a zone. You want to force them to shoot from as far away from the basket. It's a very basic principle, is you want to force them to shoot as far away from the basket as possible and force them to work to get that shot. And I think that the last element of being a good pack line team is getting out to those shooters, because you stop the penetration. Good. Okay. We've got that down. Now locate the guys that are open. It's probably your guy, because it's not a zone. You have an individual assignment. Locate him and close out, as Brian said, under control. Don't fly by. We see guys doing that. That was last year's thing, was flybys. Archie Miller does not want you to fly by. He wants you to get up in a guy's face without going past him, because again, as he said, good teams drive closeouts. So that's, if a guy closes out too hard at you, that is a clean path to the basket. And you've seen guys on IU run out at a closeout at a 3 and jump past. Well, now the other team's playing 5-on-4 because you're in the stands. And so it's about, closing out under control, contesting the shot. You don't have to block the shot. And I think that's something that a lot of guys get caught up in, is when they go do those flybys, they're trying to block a shot, they're trying to make a big play. No, just get in the guy's face, contest the shot. Don't let him have an open look. Make him shoot over you, make him shoot and be uncomfortable in that shot, more than, making a spectacular play. And the pack line defense, what it was originally designed for, was for less talented teams to be able to play with more talented teams by working together and being a better whole than the some of the parts. And so if you all are on the same page and you're all playing hard and you're all sort of recognizing the same things, it should work. And obviously it's a huge transition from last year to this year. It's going to take time. But the point is, you want to make those, as I said, you want to make those guys shoot from farther away from the basket, and you want to make them shoot contested shots, as opposed to, having them run around and maybe drive into your big man. Like some defenses want, if you have a big center at the back, they want you to drive into that guy. You might be closer to the hoop, but you got to shoot it over a 7-footer or something like that. That is not the pack line. It wants to make you shoot longer shots. And so you'll see that. And that's probably, again, a symptom of learning the defense step by step. And the last step is to contest those 3-point shots, something they hadn't done at the beginning of the year. Gotten a little better at it, sort of had a bit of a setback against Michigan, I thought. But it looks like they're at least starting to get better individually. You're seeing individual guys be better at it, and soon it'll be the whole team, I think.
You distort timing and vision with your hand, be second guy off the ground type of concepts we're going to see from IU when they're really doing it well, not the flybys. But yeah, you're going to give up a little more threes, and one, you got to contest, and two, then you hope that some of these threes have been outstandingly crazy threes as well so far this year.
Yeah, Indiana State was just ridiculous. They were hitting everything. I mean, there's really no – if a team's going to hit 18 or 19 threes on you, you tip your cap and you're going to lose the game. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's, a loss to a team like Indiana State's inexcusable, but when they make that many threes, you're not going to win a game. I mean, that's just flat out the truth. So.
All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni. And Brian, the other thing that you mentioned that I'd like to touch on quickly here is post feeds. We've talked about how important De'Ron Davis is to the team. We talked about how much IU wants to play through him in the post, and I feel like you brought this up. I think we mentioned it on the post game show. Feels like they've done a better job of getting him the ball inside versus, sometimes we'd come on these other shows and be like, why can't they get the ball inside? Cody Zeller didn't touch the ball enough. Thomas Bryant didn't touch the ball enough. What have you seen them do differently this year to make us feel better about their ability to put guys in position in the post to score?
To be honest, I think they're being coached on getting the ball inside. I think that's a huge plus. But a lot of people look at the post player, and our post guys are doing a nice job getting position. They're doing a nice job passing the ball to each other, but it's a timing thing, and your perimeters have to be ready to throw the ball in. The one thing I'd like to see De'Ron do is not foot fight for too long, but time up his move. And time it up when the ball enters the wing, then step into post position so it's a quick 1 or 2 second post. Because sometimes that's an energy thing too. He fights for 6 or 7 seconds and the passer's not ready to pass it into him.
Yeah, he's a wrestler down there. He definitely is.
Yeah.
He likes the bat.
And I like a quick move. And Juwan's better with his back to the basket. He's got a quicker move. De'Ron's got to pound and pound and pound. De'Ron's got to get better angles. He's got to get a defender on a hip and then make an easy drop step. But I like that. How many times have we seen a pass, a kick out, and a repost? That's novel to Indiana basketball in the last 5 or 6 years. It's beautiful.
That was what I was going to talk about. Is De'Ron is great at that. He's two things. He's great at passing out of the post, even just to open guys. And 2, he's great at passing it to a guy when he doesn't like his position. Instead of saying like, "Oh gosh, I may not get it again. I got to go now." Like it's kind of felt like in the past, he's like, "Hey, no, I'm not in the right spot. Put it back out. I'm going to repost, and now I'm ready." And that's been really encouraging to see because he's clearly been coached on that because he was not doing that last year, and it looks like it feels more natural coming from him as well. Like he's aware that his teammates will get him the ball if he gets good position.
And it puts pressure on the defense. And we're not a great shooting team, but it'll help our shooting because the defense is going to have to guard the paint. And that gives our, average shooters a little more chance to have open shots. But I like it so far. And the other thing is I'm pro Coach Miller. I got a big crush on him, but he's designing multiple ways, whether it's screen and roll and hitting a guy on a roll, the zone offense, we're getting it to high-low action. He's doing a great job with a variety of actions to get the ball into the post. And more than that, he's emphasizing it. And that's what I think makes good post play.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say is we talked about, is it the post feeds, is the guys getting better position, whatever. One thing that always bothered me about Cody Zeller, and I love Cody Zeller, he's a deity, I know, he's amazing, was he would start his post-ups below the block and on the wing, and then he would come up into the post. And if you're doing that, you're pushing your defender up towards the top of the lane, and that makes it a tough angle for a pass from the wing because the guy is sort of can block you off. If you're watching at home, you can see this. But and Noah Vonleh did the same thing. Thomas Bryant and De'Ron Davis both start their posts in the lane from the high side and move down. And when you do that, you have a wider base to start from facing your teammates as opposed to being facing out of bounds. And so you're more available. There is more room to throw you the ball on either hand as opposed to having to go to one hand only depending on the side you're on. So he's making himself more available. And I think that also the offense is spread out wider to the wings this year than it has been in the past because instead of having, to be in a position to shoot a 3 as the offense was last year, it's starting wider and a little higher and then coming down. And I think that that's giving a better angle to the post pass if these guys are getting good position. And so it's making it easier both ways for the entry pass by where they're positioned and then where the post guy is positioned. So that's probably why. It wasn't these guys didn't want to throw it in the post before. It was that the location on the floor was not conducive to throwing it into the post, and the post up where the guys were starting their post up was not conducive to throwing into the post. So it was a number of things playing together there. And I think that this offense is much more conducive to the post and to, just playing through the paint in general. We know that for a fact. We know that's what Archie Miller wants to do. There's a reason this team is besting bigger teams in points in the paint, is because that's the focus.
The ball's getting into good scoring position as opposed to the 15-foot post catches where you had to dribble 19 times to get into the basket. Exactly. It's a treasure to see. It's just good basketball right now, I think.
All right. Well, that'll do it for our coach's corner here. And coming up on the assembly call, we're going to answer your Twitter questions and wrap up the show. Stick with us. All right. Let me listen to that real fast.
Good segment, Brian. That was for all you basketball nerds out there.
Yeah, that's good stuff. There's the game last year. I think it was the Nebraska game I was at over Christmas, right before the bowl game, and I counted post feeds, and I think I got to 5
last year
with like 4 minutes to go in the game. Yeah, last year, so different. And I don't want to beat up on, and we talked sometimes too much about that last year versus this year, but
sure,
boy, Archie does some good things, and
it's so obvious he's a coach's kid. It's so obvious. I mean, just watching the way the offense runs, watching like what he focuses on, which is like a guy makes a bad play defensively or turns it over and he's on the bench a minute later. Like, I mean, those are all just coach's kid things, and if guys don't hustle or they don't dive on the floor, he yells at them for it. It's
Ryan, let me ask you this. Recruiting too. And again, not to say one's better than the other, because we haven't really focused a lot on Archie's, but it seems like there was a emphasis on offense and athletes previous things. And now there's a different type of dude that Archie's going to go after. And then I wonder how many Archie dudes are on the current roster, or does he have to work with dudes that he might not have recruited? I don't want to mention names or anything, but that was a thought that went through my mind. How many of these dudes would have been Archie dudes? And then how does Archie change that as a coach when he's not coaching?
It's hard to say because, I mean, any new coaching change, you're gonna have players who aren't your players, and so but really this team, for the most part, the guys who are playing, he got lucky because I think a lot of them do fit his mold. I mean, Devontae Green, he loves. You could just tell. And Al Durham, he loves. I think Robert Johnson, if he was shooting a little better, he would love him. I mean, he loves what he gives him defensively. Juwan Morgan, perfect guy for his setup. I don't know if he'd have a post guy like Deron Davis, but he wants to. He's never had one before. Yeah. So I don't know if that's an Archie Miller player or not. He's just never had him before. As far as recruiting goes, yeah, I think that you're gonna see fewer diamond in the rough kind of guys given a long rope to develop into a Victor Oladipo. I think that he's more gonna try and get guys who fit specific roles and can step on campus and help you immediately, as opposed to guys who are gonna, he might be an NBA guy eventually. And I think there's gonna be a lot less focus also on NBA development. I think Archie wants to win college games, and if he has NBA players on his roster, great. If not,
a lot more interchangeable parts, right? You're going to see
I would agree with
guys 6'7" playing 2, 3, 4.
Did you notice? Right? You noticed though that the first guys he signed were all tall, long, big guys that he never got at Dayton. I mean, those guys all in this first recruiting class are all big dudes.
Here's the other thing too. We're taking over this new high school program, and the dudes who really buy in are the freshmen. The kid who got 23 the other night, but they don't know any different.
Yeah, they don't have to unlearn. They don't have to unlearn bad habits.
They don't have to unlearn things, and we have some upperclassmen who we really enjoy, but sometimes they revert back to their training, and we've had them for a summer and 3 weeks, and we don't have that high level of training yet. And I know high school is a lot different than college, but it's interesting to see that these younger guys are, eating out of our hands. The older guys are kind of looking at us like, okay.
Well, I mean, think about Josh Newkirk. I mean, I feel bad for Josh Newkirk. He's in his 3rd system in 4 years, and he had microfracture surgery. Like, I mean, that's hard on anybody. It's hard on a pro. let alone a guy who's going to class all day too. So
Yeah.
anyway, let's get Andy back in on this discussion.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
The Italians are taking over.
No, it's all right. It's all right. It gave me the time to do math, and I didn't have to do it out loud in front of everyone, so it's good. All right, so we got about 9 minutes. A little bit over
Brian,
9
just
minutes.
keep an eye on the chat for the timing.
Yep.
A little bit over 9 minutes for the question. So Ryan, I'll kind of throw it to you first for Cujo, and then I'll just kind of bounce through these questions. And
I can handle Cujo. I can handle Cujo pretty quickly.
If we get close to the end, I'll let you know. Or we'll cut questions, or we'll figure it out. But yeah, we'll just try to be relatively quick here. So all right,
let me just pull up Curtis Jones' profile real quick.
Okay.
I was just get where his recruiting ranking was.
He's right around. See, like a
85.
75? I was going to say about 75 or 80.
85 was his final 24/7 ranking. Okay, got it.
Okay, cool. All right,
we're good.
Here we go. Nope. Private file. Started recording. That would be good. All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And before we get to Twitter questions, Ryan, wanted to kind of get your quick thoughts on the Curtis Jones transfer news that came out. We didn't touch on this on the post-game show. I think in a lot of ways, looking at playing time, maybe the writing for this was on the wall. But what was your impression or reaction to the news when you found out that Cujo was going to be going elsewhere?
Well, first, I think a lot of people forget that Curtis was a high 4-star recruit. He ranked 85th in his class on the 24/7 composite. 24/7 itself had him ranked number 71. He was the 11th ranked combo guard. This is a talented, athletic kid, kind of long for a combo guard. It could shoot it a bit in high school. He never showed that other than his, at the high point of his career. And it's sad to say this was his first game against Kansas, where he really showed some real stuff out there, and hit some big threes. The moment wasn't too big for him. He clinched the game with a huge breakaway dunk. He came in looking like one of like a dude, like he was going to be one of the next guys, and he just never developed at Indiana. And sometimes kids just don't fit at a school, or they just they like the school, they just don't jive with the coach or mesh with their teammates or whatever. I never heard negative things about Curtis. I don't, I'm not super close to the team now that I'm not in Bloomington anymore, but I never heard any negative things. I just think it might have just been an awkward fit. And he never really took the steps to become the player that he's certainly capable of. So look, you're looking at the roster, you look at the playing time, you look at the abundance of guards, you look at the guys coming in next year, and you look at it and you think, there's really no room for this guy, especially with the way Al Durham stepped up, especially with, Robert Finney coming in next year, with Devontae Green being better than everybody thought he was when he was recruited. That's a crowded backcourt. And, if you get a guy like Darius Garland, where is Curtis Jones going to play? And so I think that this was expected. I don't think this was unexpected at all. I don't want to say I was surprised by when it happened. I figured maybe at the Christmas break, you might see somebody leave. But, I certainly wish Curtis well. I think he's an uber talented kid, and I think that I hope he finds the right spot where he can develop. I think that there's certainly a lot of potential there to be unlocked, and hopefully he finds a place where he can do that.
Yeah, we all wish him the best, and I think it'll be a case where system fit becomes really important, because he came to IU to be part of a Tom Crean system. And I think he would have probably earned more playing time in this year. Obviously, a lot of what ifs and a scenario like that, but hopefully he can find a place that's a good fit for him and has a successful career. I know IU fans have one of the things they've done pretty consistently is follow guys who have gone to other programs to watch them and see what they can do. So wish him the best as we go forward. Ryan, I'm going to throw this first Twitter question to you. This came from Scott. It says, do you think any advice that Rojo might have gotten when he was testing the NBA waters could be affecting his shot? What is your thought about that?
No, I think was that for me or for Brian? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was you, Ryan. Hey, we did pretty good. We made it to the last one before I confused
it. All right, I'll take this one, Coach. No, I think I don't think so. I think that Rob's just got a lot of things going on in his mind right now. New system. How do I fit in? Am I the leader? Am I going to handle the ball more? All those things. and maybe just trying to get better as an overall player. And I think the shooting is in his head. I think that's where it is. And maybe this week off will give him a chance to solely focus on shooting, and just get that down. And I think that the team as a whole needs to get better at shooting, frankly, particularly on the free throw line. So hopefully they get a couple days here where they can practice, settle down, relax. And I honestly, with Rojo, I think that if he gets one or two to go down in a row and gets hot, I think he can get back to better. I don't expect him to ever be 45% again like he was. I think as a sophomore, he was 45%. He's never going to get there again for me. But, if he could creep around that 39, 40% range, that would really help this team. And I think that, it's all a matter of just technique and practice and technique. And eventually it'll get sorted. But right now he's incredibly off. It's just, it's painful to watch because we know he's a good shooter.
Yeah. All right. So Brian, I'm going to go to you with the next one. This is from Chris. Said last year, Louisville stifled IU's offense by pressuring our guards beyond the three-point line, just like Michigan did last Saturday. What's the solution? This feels like a good question for the coach.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right now on the court, you got to go through the post, and you've got to force. I think Juwan Morgan getting off to a quick start, and Deron Davis, and opening up possible shooters for the adjustment that Louisville is going to have to make. You got to handle their pressure if they're going to come out and press in their zone. But we've done a nice job getting the ball into the middle of the zone. I think that's going to be vital if they're playing zone. But I think we got to attack the lane either versus man or zone. Interesting. I haven't watched a lot of Louisville since Coach Pitino's left to see if they're running the same kind of pressure defense. I assume that they are to some extent. But the athletes are there, and you're going to have to go strong. You're going to have to use shot fakes. But I would go Juwan Morgan and Deron Davis to a heavy dose to start, and then make the changes necessary afterwards.
Yeah, I think the big things to watch for in that game, they are third in the nation in 2-point field goal defense. Really have a lot of guys who, some good shot blockers and athletes around the rim. A little bit more to, some of the defensive concepts we talked about before. They're more than happy to force guys into the lane and have somebody sitting there to protect the rim, and that's why they pressure out so much as they do. And they've done a good job of keeping teams off the free throw line. So, those are two of the things that IU's done the best on the offensive end of the floor this season is make twos, get to the rim, and get fouled. So, if IU can reverse the trends that Louisville's shown to this point in the season, I think that goes a long way. I think there's a level of aggressiveness, and while still being able to protect the basketball, they're really going to come out and pressure and try to, use some fakes and get around him. And I think the fact that you've got a guy like Juwan Morgan who can handle the ball at his size gives a little bit of different versatility. And one of the things that we've seen these last couple games is the guards doing such a good job of rebounding allows IU to get out and get moving a little bit quicker. So be interesting to see what kind of rebound totals the guards post in the game.
Hey guys, I got to admit a mistake real quick. This is a rare occurrence where I did something wrong, and I'm willing to admit it. I said, in talking about Curtis Jones, apparently I've been alerted to the fact I said if Darius Garland comes, are you going to have room for Curtis Jones? I meant obviously Romeo Langford. I apologize to anybody who was listening and screaming at the radio when that happened. I apologize. Yes, Romeo Langford.
Wow. Brian, you've been part of history. This is the first time Ryan's ever admitted to being wrong on the show. So
I'm shocked. I'm shocked as you are. I'm as shocked as you are.
But to cover for my fellow Italian, back to Louisville. We got to take care of the basketball and take good shots and not get caught up in a pace that we don't want. We have to dictate pace. So Ryan, that's all right, bud. We knew what you meant, and I think we have a good shot. We're going to have to play well Saturday. But again, I think we have shots to beat some teams on our schedule.
Yeah, I think Indiana's going to have to play its best game of the season to beat Louisville. But they've been playing better, so that's not out of the question. And I agree with you guys. I think that attacking the paint, even if it's not a zone, attack that free throw line. With a guy cutting in like a Juwan Morgan, a Justin Smith, and then attack from there. Have guys cut off of that. I think that's a good way to attack an aggressive defense. So I'd like to see that. Andy, we'll leave it to you to wrap up. Anything else you got?
All right, quick question. Just go to you both for a quick answer. So they got these 2 games left. I think all of us would be happy with a split if they can somehow do that between the Louisville game and the Notre Dame game. Which one do you think IU has a better chance to win? Ryan, you first.
Louisville.
Brian, what about you?
I'll say Notre Dame.
All right. Well, somebody's bound to be right. We're not going to get
There's a
Ryan
wager.
to admit he was. We're not going to get Ryan to admit he was wrong twice.
Nope.
So
Never gonna happen.
even if that doesn't play out, then we're definitely out of luck. Just a quick reminder: after the Louisville game, Galen Clavio from Crimson Cast is going to be sitting in for Jared and hosting the show. So he and Ryan will be here to break it down. But that will do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure you join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast. And you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. All right. I think that should do it. I think I forgot to some music at the end, but whatever. I think timing-wise, we're in good shape. So
let Jared fix that.
Yeah, I think Michael's going to fix it. It started, so I don't really know if there's much he can do about it, but that's okay. I remembered about halfway through.
All right, boys. Good to have you on, Brian.
My mistake for the end. So. Yeah, Brian, really appreciate it.
No problem.
Get back to work.
I'll get you on again here. And
good luck with
Ryan, I'm definitely
bracketology, Andy.
Oh, I may need it.
It's gonna be a weird year, man.
I may need it. Yeah, it's gonna be challenging given the way some of these teams have played. It's like you think you start to have things figured out, and then Kansas loses to Washington inexplicably. So, that's what makes it fun. So, all right, cool. Well, I'll get all this posted. Appreciate everybody for joining us on YouTube. Ryan and Galen will be here after
Saturday
the Louisville game. I'll be coaching helping coach before and after the game, but I think I can't actually watch the game in the middle. So yeah, good timing there. At least that's at least got that going for me. So we'll do that. And then we got a week between games, which would be a little bit weird. I only have one game to talk about on the radio show next week.
All right.
Fast and Furious. And once they start up again, they're going to continue to come Fast and Furious. So we'll enjoy the respite while we can get it.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
All right.
I'm out of here.
All right.
Thanks, guys.